Hello, I'm Rick Harnish with the High Speed Rail Alliance. Thanks to everyone for joining us today. The High Speed Rail Alliance is a nonprofit educational organization. We work to be the trusted source of information on what high-speed rail is, why we should build it, and what steps local leaders need to take in order to make it happen. We educate people through a variety of forums like these webinars and in-person events, etc. And we provide people the tools they need in order to educate their leaders in state capitals and in Washington, D.C. We believe in an integrated network approach where a variety of trains connect together to serve entire regions, and in fact connect regions together, with a mix of probably about 80% using existing infrastructure shared with freight trains and 20% new high-speed lines running at 200 miles an hour plus. I want to thank you all again for being here. This should be an exciting program. And, we've got Jorge Rios, who is the VP of Business Development for DB Engineering and Consulting in the US. And Jorge, I really appreciate you coming back again with yet another very interesting topic about, how to make sure you charge enough for the infrastructure, that enough trains run, but you can continue to maintain it. So thank you again for coming. And a little bit of housekeeping. If you have questions, please put them in the question and answer. Today I'm by myself. Chris is on a business trip. So I'll be reading from the question and answers after the presentation. So Jorge, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you for having me again. It's my pleasure. I think we all believe that we are changing the world a little bit, and so just give me a second. I'll try to share my screen.
Okay.
On. Can you please confirm that you can see my screen and my mouse moving?
Yep, we can see both. Excellent.
Okay. No. So, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. This was the famous speech of by then President of the United States to the Gorbachev, who was the President of the Soviet Union. And this happened in 1987. And I am making this point because this was the start of a sequence of events that have a profound impact in the German railways. And I always like to start with a little bit with the story, so to understand where are we coming from. And especially here, I want also to start saying that this presentation is not a proposal to implement the German model in the United States. It just, as you mentioned, Rick, this is like an academic exercise, and at least to use this as an example that in parallel to the development of all the infrastructure, at least in Germany and in Europe, we have to start thinking how we were going to pay for the use of this infrastructure, and this is the idea with this presentation. So. Again, 1989 was the fall of the wall. Then you may remember 1990, the reunification of Germany. And of course, with the reunification of Germany, the question was coming as well. Okay, we need to reunify the two railway organizations that was at that point of time running. 1991, sorry. This was an important milestone. This was the VDE project presentation or proposal. VDE are the initials in German of the transportation projects for the German unity. And it was 9 corridors. One of them was canceled, then 8 were finally built. And those were key corridors for connecting the two Germanies at that point of time. And this was a big push to our high speed. And if I compare this a little bit with the infrastructure bill here in the United States, was something similar at that point of time, where billions were invested in the rail infrastructure, and then of course it was it was developing all these connectivity around the country. 1993 was another important milestone. So the European Union came, and I just put here this statement. So one of the ideas behind the European Union was the freedom of movement of people, goods, services, and money. And of course, then one way of moving these people and these goods was by rail. And then finally, 1994, remember that I mentioned that with the unification of Germany, there was also these two organizations. So there was something that was called the German Rail Reform. And some of the relevant highlights of this reform was, let's say that there was two main things that was the idea to achieve with this reform. The first one was to increase rail traffic. And I have one slide a little bit later about this one. So just please remember it. So this was one of the core things. And the reason was because there was a drop in the rail market share. The second thing was they were going through a critical budget. There was a challenge in the amount of budget that was going to be required to merge these two organizations in one. And then, of course, then was for achieving these objectives, the strategy was again to merge these two organizations, so the Reichsbahn and the Bundesbahn. The Bundesbahn was the railway organization in the west, and the Reichsbahn was the railway organization in the east. So there was also an important decision. It was that the rail infrastructure responsibility will remain with the government. And I will explain a little bit what was behind this decision. And then the rail operations, talking about the train operations, then there was also the decision connected also to the European Union to open this rail market to competition. And this was, as I said, this was the start of many things that were happening in the railways, in the German railways. So remember that I mentioned before that there was a crisis in the rail market. So we want to increase the rail traffic. Here is the numbers of the market share. So the market share was dropping in freight. So in 1990, it was only 21% of the market share, even though that let's say that the total train kilometer or the total train kilometers that were produced were more or less constant. The other modes of transportation were growing much faster than the rail at that point of time. And the same thing was happening in the passenger market. So the market share dropped from 37 to 6. And even though that the passenger kilometers, the volume in passenger kilometer was more or less stable, the other modes were also growing much faster. So there was the idea of doing something to solve this challenge. And here we see in this chart, then we divide these in two. It's also still divided in the present. So we divide the business in regional passenger, which is this white piece of the chart. And then the gray, it's long distance, which is also now our high speed line. And again, so remember, objective 1, rail traffic. Objective 2 was to relieve the budget. When they start doing the planning of putting together these two organizations, and they start putting the numbers together, in 1991, they did the plan for the next 10 years. They were going to need, they did the planning in Deutsche marks, which was the currency at that point of time. If we convert these, the blue piece is what was required by the West, and the gray part is what was required by the East. So when you put all these numbers together and in dollars of 1991, and I was just using the rate of 1991 to convert it, the budget required was more than $200 billion just to keep these two organizations alive for 10 years. So there was also the need of doing something in this regard. Then comes, as I said, the merge of these two organizations is the DV, is DV now, so it's Deutsche Bahn. And DV was setting also some goals when the organization was created and merged. And if we put this in a balance, so we make it like kind of a compromise between long-term and short-term goals, then the long-term mainly remain responsibility of the government. And I will explain you. So some of these examples are unity. I think you cannot allocate the unity of a country in the open market. So these are kind of things that we want to keep in them as part of the role of the government. The same thing, economic development. I think the economic development of a state is still remain as a responsibility of the government, and the same thing, environment improvement. And in the other hand, then we open this to the market, financial sustainability, free competition, rail market share. And if we more or less divide these into infrastructure operations, which is what we have here, the business of the infrastructure operation that was then created was based on selling access fees. And this is what we are going to be deep diving today. So this infrastructure operation was more or less supporting more these long-term goals, while the train operations were supporting these short-term goals. And remember that the way that the business is based in train operations is then by selling services or transportation services to passengers and to freight customers. So and now remember then these access fees. So the flow of the cash, the flow of the money, it's the passenger and the freight customers are paying the train operators. Then the train operators are paying for the access fees to the infrastructure operator. So we then, after all these goals were setting, the first thing that happened was that the DB was divided in three main business units. So passengers, and this is not only including high speed, it's also including regional, mass transit, light rail, and so on and so forth. We have then freight. DB is operating, or DB is one of the biggest logistics operator and rail cargo operators in Europe. And then we have the infrastructure. In the side of passengers, so we move more than 25,000 passenger trains per day. These are DB trains. We move more than 2.7 billion passengers per year. In freight, we move more than 1 million tons per day, weekday. Not so many in the weekend, but in weekday we move 1 million. And in the infrastructure side, we own more than 5,700 stations and more than 20,000 track miles. And here we move more than 40,000 trains per day. And this is not only our trains. So this is also the trains belonging to more than 452 different operators. So this is a humongous amount of operators accessing the infrastructure every day. So this infrastructure was then, as I said, was the first thing is that we need, or we agree, we committed to make it available in a non-discriminatory manner to all these railway undertakings. And therefore, this was also, let's say, the start of DV developing a methodology. And DV was the first rail infrastructure undertaking in Europe who was establishing these train path pricing system to try to provide this not only in a non-discriminatory access, but also to try to charge the different services in a fair way. And what happened after we opened this to the market? So in 1994, when we opened it for the first time, we were having 40 railway undertakings, mainly 40 railway train operators. And now, roughly 30 years after, then we have more than 452. So this is really, if you think a little bit of trying to develop a methodology for all these kind of trains, combining freight, combining regional passenger service, combining high speed, subsidized, unsubsidized, and this is a critical part of the business. And this is what I'm saying, in parallel to develop this infrastructure, equally it's important to develop these methodologies. So VV came, and this is the most recent methodology. I will explain a little bit before what was happening in the past. So the components, the key components in the access fees are divided in three. So the first one is the direct cost of train operation, but be careful, this is not the cost of the train operator to operate the train. This is the cost of the infrastructure operator to run the train in the infrastructure. So this is, let's say that this is the traditional way. We try to calculate how much are the costs of these, and then we try to divide it into the different trains. Then here we have something that is called the markup. I think this is I am from the opinion that this is maybe a mistake in the translation from Germany to English, because I think this is a component that is market based. So here in this piece, we take a look internally to the cost of operating the infrastructure for this train. But in this blue piece, we then look to the market condition of the train that is actually running in the system. And then we have additional elements with our connector. Remember that I was mentioning at the very beginning of the slides, I was mentioning that we have long-term objectives. Okay, so we want, for example, to provide services to disadvantaged communities. We want to provide services, for example, or we want to promote environmentally friendly services. We want to promote safety. And then all these kind of things is what we, in some cases, we charge them more, depending if there is something that we don't want to promote or we want to penalize. And then we can provide a discount if this is a key service that we want, that we consider that is aligned to the long-term objective of the infrastructure owner, which in this case is the state of Germany. So again, direct costs. This is the view of the rail infrastructure service. And here we try to recover all the planning, the operations, the maintenance, and the depreciation of the infrastructure. So again, this is the rail infrastructure view. Then the markup, it's now we look to a different place and we look, okay, let me see dear train operator who are running in my infrastructure. Let me take a look, how is your business? And depending on your business, I will be charging you a value. And then here we take a look, for example, to the market elasticity. The definition of market elasticity is how sensitive are the passenger and the customers to a change in the price. So we also look at this. This is one. So this is what I'm saying. We're looking in the other side of the fence. Then we look, of course, to the demand and offer for the specific service that the train operator is offering. And this is also connected to the capacity that we can offer to them. And also we look to the size of the cake of this train operator. And the reason why we do this is because we, at the very beginning, we were having a different methodology, and there was a lot of critiques about why subsidized trains, which were meant to try to develop pieces of the country and unity of the country, were paying exactly the same than highly profitable services owned by private companies. So all these kind of things we're trying to put into a mathematical equation and into a financial model just to come with this formula. And then, as I said before, the last piece is the additional elements, and these are connected to the strategy or the policy, in this case of the state. If we want to develop services, as I said, in disadvantaged communities, if we want to promote environmentally friendly, so we give a discount. If we want to, let's say, provide an incentive to an operator who is investing a lot in safety, then we can provide a discount, but we can also provide, or we can also apply a penalty if it is the opposite, or if it is, for example, when somebody is moving in the train dangerous goods, things which are not very friendly with the environment, we also penalize them with some extra charges. So let me give you an example here. This example, I am only comparing passenger trains, but it's also applicable with freight. So these two trains, the long distance high speed and the regional train, are using, in this particular example, they are using the same piece of infrastructure. So they are running in the same tracks. They are sharing the tracks. So we are going to do the calculation of how much they shall pay. And again, this is just for illustration purposes, because these numbers are changing every day depending on the market. But bear with me for illustration, and let me walk you with my laser so that you don't get lost. So when we look at the infrastructure operation cost in euros per train kilometer, operating from the infrastructure point of view, a high-speed train is more expensive because it's, of course, then there is the infrastructure will need more maintenance, and we need to keep this to a higher standard than a regional train. So this is why, in this case, the high-speed train is paying more, or almost twice, so 1.2 euros per train kilometer of a high-speed train, while a regional train, which is going at lower speed, it's only paying 0.7 euros per train kilometer. Okay, but again, this is the look of the cost internally of the infrastructure operator. Now look to this piece that I highlighted in red. This is where we are looking inside the business of the train who is running in our infrastructure. So of course, we take a look to the revenue in euros per train kilometer. So this is the size of the business that this particular service is getting. So in this example, it's 50 euros per train kilometer for a high-speed train, 16 euros per train kilometer for a regional train. Now then we look to the demand elasticity. This is what I was explaining. And the thing is that these two trains have different schemes of competition. High-speed trains, they normally compete more against airlines, while regional trains, they compete more against car. So the sensitivity of the people using each one of these services is different. In this particular case, the sensitivity is bigger in the high-speed train, in this example, than in the regional. So when we apply our formula to do the calculation of this markup, so when we apply as I said, there is a complex formula behind it. So in this example, it's $8.11 euros per train kilometer for the high speed and 4.33 for the regional train. So then you add these cost components, you add it with this markup piece, and then you get the total access fees before you apply the penalties or the incentives. So in this case, you see, well, okay, the high-speed train will be paying 9.31 euros per train kilometer, while the regional is only paying 5. But take a look, when you look at the size of the cake of each one, then these total access fees is equivalent to a little bit more than 18% of the revenue, while in this one, the percentage is bigger. So again, what I'm saying is, this is a methodology that was implemented after 2018 to include specific conditions of the train that is running in the system. And more examples. So how do we divide these segments? So for example, in freight, we charge them if they have extra heavy trains, then they pay a different value. Dangerous goods, different value. If they are flexible, then we can give them a discount. But if they want a priority, then they need to pay a surplus. And here are just some examples. So a standard freight train will pay 3.05 euros per train per kilometer. What if you compare it, for example, this one, with extra heavy, then it's paying 4.3, of course, because the wear on the infrastructure is bigger. But if, for example, this train has a flexible schedule and we can delay or send in earlier, plus minus 2 hours, then he can apply it to a discount. In the same thing for local passengers, we take a look and we divide if it is urban, regional, and we also take a look if this is a subsidized service. And here are some examples of different regions depending on the market. In higher speed, we do also something similar. So we remember this is high speed and long distance. So the faster the train, the more expensive for the infrastructure side also. So we charge almost twice, a little bit more than twice, that a slow train or slower train. But again, if the train, in many cases, when you have an express service point to point, you may not care about the specific track alignment that you're following. So you can take different alignments, and then you can get a way cheaper value if you have this kind of flexibility in your operation. Okay, so conclusion number one, I think, as I mentioned before, is not to try to push a German or a European model into the US. Is that in parallel to, again, to develop this infrastructure and having the opportunity of this infrastructure bill that is coming into the rail industry in the United States, it's we need to work in parallel to this in developing these methodologies. And I think this is more and more applicable, not only in the US, everywhere. So because now we are sharing the alignments, and we're sharing the track between freight, between regional trains, between high speed. This is also what is happening in some of the corridors, for example, in California, high speed. And then, of course, and this needs to be updated. So this is every year, and I will show you some examples. Every year, in the case of DV, we are releasing a new access fees policy. Then again, what we try to do is with the direct cost, we recover the operational expenditures. With the markup, we maximize the revenue for the infrastructure operator. And then this revenue, in the case, in our case, which is owned by the state, then we use it to support the long-term objectives of DV. So let's see how it looks like. This is DV Nets. This is our business unit, who is the owner of the track of the infrastructure. So these are the years, and these are the revenue of this business unit in millions of euros. So you see that from 2012, it was more or less having a constant growth. And then there was a big jump, almost fivefold. And then it was again constant. And then I want just to highlight a couple of things, and I will elaborate a little bit more. You may be asking what happened here, and you may be asking what happened here, because this was during the pandemic. So let's discuss this one initially. Remember that the business model of the infrastructure business unit is based in selling slots or access to the infrastructure. This was the only business unit of DV that was not having a big drop in the numbers, because it was different. So the trains were making, and our own trains were running empty during the pandemic, and they were having a big loss. But the fact is that when you apply for the slots, when you apply for the access, you have to pay for it, use it or not. And I will elaborate a little bit more. So, and of course, there was also a big increase during the pandemic in freight. And again, and you may also ask what happened here. And remember that I put here updated as the market changed. Until 2017, we were only looking in our own house, meaning the infrastructure side, and we were only looking mainly to the direct costs. So focus on the, as I said, on the how much infrastructure is the train using, and then we were calculating how much to charge them. After 2018, we said, well, let's don't do this anymore. Let's look let's focus on the train that is traveling in our infrastructure. And you see, this was the impact of doing this is a fivefold increase in the revenues of the infrastructure owner. That then we use these additional revenues and also to support these long-term objectives. Conclusion number two, because we are talking about two things. One, open access, which I already explained, but also what happened when we opened this to the market. I mean, when we opened this, the train operations to free competition. So this is what happened. So now DV before the reform, the whole cake was for DV. Now we need to share our cake with more companies, which is fine. But open competition was having in Germany, and I think everywhere, a huge impact in the rail market. So at the end, what is important here is when we see this as the total market of the rail, that the size of the cake is growing. Now we have one slice of the cake, but the cake is bigger. So these are the companies, and many of them are belonging to other countries. I think Abellio is Dutch, Transdev I think is from France, Netinera I think is from Italy, and so on and so on and so forth. I mean, these are some examples. So we have, and again, this is just regional. This chart is not including high speed. This is including right now. In 2020, we were having 126 operators. 7 are DB companies, and then this is these 7 here. You see federal. When you see federal is DB. Then state and municipalities. They were having these 43, private companies 62, and then foreign state-owned companies, this is the 14. So this is the share in number, but this is the share in performance. So this is the market share. So we, even though that we have only 7 companies, DB internally still move more than 72% of the train kilometers. And if we take a DB out of the equation, then this is the proportion between private, foreign, and state and municipalities. And again, many small companies or medium-sized companies have been now entering to the market successfully, and they are making a good business. And again, the revenue per train kilometer is growing because we are attracting more and more customers to use these regional passenger. And what happened in the other side? What happened in freight? So right now we have more than 170 operators. 3 of them are DB. And then we have here the same state and municipalities. Private is the orange. Foreign companies is this one, and foreign state-owned companies is these 14. And again, this is, even though that we have only 3 companies belonging to the group, to DB, we still move more than 46, and more than 46%. But look what happened. So remember when I was showing at the very beginning, the volume of the size of the cake in ton kilometers in 95, before we opened this to the market, was only 70, and now we have almost twice. So again, this is how, by opening this to the market, has bringing huge transformation to the rail market. And I just want to share with you a couple of cool links. So many of these things is, you will find many, this is public, all this information is public. There is, because remember, this is regulated also by the European Union. So there is an organization co-founded or co-financed by the European Union, and they have developed a lot of tools. So let me see if this works. Let me try to open this link. And because this, which started in Germany, is now implemented all over Europe. So take a look to this one. This is the charging information system of Europe. And let's try to make a little example. I don't know why they only have kind of an access or some kind of working of this service during some days. You see here. But let's play a little bit. Let's say that I am a university or an educational institution. Let's say that I am from Germany. And let's start the calculation. This is so open that everyone can have access. Let's assume here for trying to do it very quickly. So let's select a freight train. Let's use the timetable and the prices of 2022, and let's use this classic method. And you will be playing here. Let's say that I want to send a train inside Germany, for example. You will be using the infrastructure of DB in this case. Let's say that we want to send it from Berlin. Let me see. Let's say that we are taking, just as an example, Berlin, from the airport of Berlin, and let's say that we want to send it to Munich, for example. Munich. Let's say that we're going to send it to the main station of Munich for saying something. Okay, next. And we're going to send a conventional train, diesel. We're going to use a standard path. And I just need to be sure that I fill as a minimum the ones with asterisk. So let's say that I am moving for illustration purpose that I'm moving 5,000 tons. And let's say that I don't have flexibility. Remember that I was thinking that if I was explaining, if you have flexibility, then you get a discount. And let's say that you want to send it with high priority. Let's see what happened here where we calculate it. This is not this website is not DB. DB is a member of this RailNet. But you will see here, and here it goes. So for sending this train from the station from the Berlin airport, again this is a silly example, but then also to Munich, the price of sending this is 672 kilometers, and the price that this train operator company will be paying is 3,176 euros. And you can play. I mean, you can play trying to change the priority with what I was explaining a little bit, but I don't want to use all the time with this. And let me share one more with you. When I am explaining this sounds easy, but it's not easy to manage 452 train operators competing for the access to the infrastructure. So this is what we call the DB network statement. And if you go here into this one, you will see the instructions, and you will see that it's not easy at all. I mean, this is a complex process of defining this methodology, but it has to be public because, as I said, it has to be fair, and we want to provide it in a non-discriminatory manner. So this is the 2022 network statement. If you go, for example, here, I think it's chapter 3. In chapter 3, you will have all the access conditions. So it's not that you can just apply for it without any kind of requirements. You need to follow some rules, some operational rules. You need to have some safety certificates. You need to demonstrate that you have the licenses. You need to have insurances. If you take a look, for example, in number 4, there is an explanation of how the capacity of the infrastructure is allocated. And again, these are just examples. And the last link that I was willing to show you, it's, hold on, let me close this one. It's this one, no, this one. This one, you can find many of the things that I was explaining. This is, again, you will see here many of the methodology explaining how this is calculated. I mean, I am just sharing with you if you want to have a little bit more details. And you know, DB is a company 100% owned by the state of Germany. So all our numbers are public. So you can, I mean, that there is no more transparency that these companies. So you can see, for example, the operating income performance. You can play a little bit with all the numbers if this is something interesting for you. And with this, Rick, I hand it over back to you. Rick, are you still there? Not sure. I'm not sure if we lost Rick or not.
Well, I'm sorry. I forgot to unmute and turn my camera on. I apologize. Thank you for pointing that out.
No worries.
I think you answered this question, but the first one out of the gate was, how is DB owned? Is it a private company that is owned by the government, or is it a unit of government?
DB, the 3 business units of DB is still 100% owned by the state of Germany.
Okay, but it is a company, essentially.
Right.
Yeah. Kind of like Amtrak.
And we compete. We compete, as I said before, the infrastructure side, because this is more linked to the policy and the objectives that I was mentioning before, the long term. So it was the infrastructure was declared in Germany a state asset for economic development. So this belongs kind of a monopoly, but it's open to the market. This is what I'm saying. And in the two other business units, which is passengers and freight, we compete as any other private company in the market, and we have to pay exactly the same fees, and we need to follow exactly the same rules and procedures to apply for the access to the infrastructure. Is it more or less answering the question, Rick?
Yes. So, but then how is it assured? You know, because like when E.C.O started, the National Railroad pulled some cute little tricks about, oh, there isn't room in Centrale, and oops, we accidentally put up a fence that makes it inconvenient for your passengers. In Germany, it seems like they don't have those kinds of complaints. So what is the process for making sure that it truly is an open market?
Remember that DV is, DV is owned by the state, but we cannot do whatever we want. We have on top of DV, there is something that is called the Eisenbahnbundesamt, EBA, call it in the US FRA. So this is regulating us. And then on top of it, we have the ERA, the European Railway, I think it's administration, I forgot, administration of authority. So we have we have many eyes regulating and monitoring what is doing. And of course, you know that all these things that I was showing are public. So no matter who is the operator, you can have a clear and transparent way of looking at these access fees. And this is, as I said, this is not that this is developed in a vacuum. This is developed in consultation with all these stakeholders. Yeah, and of course we own the infrastructure, but we need to follow rules. Okay.
And then what's the process for making sure a new operator's equipment is safe and compatible with the network it's using?
Remember, there is, if we go here to this one, can you still see my screen or not?
Yes, yes.
You will hear when you look to the conditions to access, they need to, as I said, they need to follow these rules. They need to demonstrate that they have the safety certification. We will not allow them, and we are not the ones who who are going to issue the safety certification. We have, as I said, the Eisenbahnbundesamt of the EVA, which is like the FRA, and the FRA is then the one who are certifying these system. And then, of course, even in a bigger scale, the ERA, because these trains may be running in more than just one country. Remember that we have these. If we compare a little bit, the European Union is kind of the United States. So our trains are crossing different states, and each one of these states, then they report to these ERA.
Okay. And then how does ticketing work for like if, for example, there's multiple operators on a single line? How does the ticketing work?
Ticketing, remember that what I was explaining today was the business of the infrastructure operator. Ticketing, we can talk about it, but this is the business of the train operator. So it's the responsibility of the train operator. In our case, for example, when we have DV, the passenger side, we have our own revenue collection systems, and I'll tell you something, Rick. One level of difficulty it's developing the infrastructure for paying and for planning. This is one thing, and this is the responsibility of our other business unit, as I said, because now we are providing a tool, and we use in Germany we use DV Navigator, but this is again this is the trip planning and the way of buying tickets in DV for the passenger. So the passenger comes here and they plan and they book and buy the tickets. And it's an integrated platform, so you can buy a ticket from point to point, including all the regional and the local connectivity. But more complicated than the technology, Rick, is the agreements between the different operators. So one thing is the technical platform, and the other thing is all these agreements that need to be in place so that you can buy one single ticket, and then the system will be doing revenue sharing according to these rules and according to these agreements. This is the complicated part. But again, this is not part of the presentation. If this is another topic that you would like to see, this itself, it's a whole presentation as well.
Maybe we'll do that. That's an interesting idea. So we talked about that. Are there any high-speed competitors?
Yeah, we remember you can take the trains. It's free. It's free to the market. We have the only thing is that we have some, for example, for the lines which are crossing the borders, we have already implemented the European train control system, so they can freely move from one side to the other one. We have a target to have all our lines with this European train control system, but for the time being, there are specific lines where these trains can go from one side to the other. It's not a matter of the business is ready. It's that these lines also need to have these interoperability things in place so that the trains can run. But this is how it works. You can take a train easily, for example, from Germany. If you're going to Inotrans, then you can take the train to Berlin, and then from Berlin to Munich, and keep going to Vienna in Austria. And there is no. I have a little map with the possibilities of connections, but again, this is business as usual. I mean, you can.
Yeah, okay, and I guess when the high-speed line to the east of Paris opened, it seemed like they had an agreement on how to split the market between ICE trains between Frankfurt and Paris and TGV trains. But that seems like an earlier agreement. That's.
No, I'm not. I don't know the details, but as I said, this is everything right now. It's under the rules of these statements that I was showing. I mean, this. Every country in the European Union, let's say that they need to follow these kind of rules of providing open access. Some of the countries are more advanced than other ones, but in principle, all of them will need to follow these rules.
Okay. And then there's a question: does the same infrastructure share freight and passenger? And if so, how do you set priorities?
I mean, this is when you look at here, there is a complex way of defining the timetable, and so you have to apply for these slots. You have to, and once that you apply for the slot, there is a process of allocating these slots. So yes, we share infrastructure. We have also some dedicated high-speed sections, which are only for high speed, but we mainly share our what we call the main line with all the services. But the priorities, the explanation of the priorities, as I said, it depends case by case, corridor by corridor. And you will see it here when you read here the capacity allocation, and also how do you offer for in some cases when there is a high demand for a specific section. So there are some rules how to compete for these, how to get a slot allocated, competing train path applications, and
okay. And then, so you talked about the market share going down for railroads up till 1990. And then you talked about that it went up, but how has the market share performed? Have the railroads been able to increase market share?
Yes, especially in our case, let me see if I may have one slide at the end of this. Hold on. Just give me. Maybe this one is a good one. Hold on. Yeah, I think this slide. We're talking. Can you see these two charts?
Yeah.
Okay, take a look. For example, this is DV regional, DV long distance. Take a look at the volume in millions of passengers. Of course, our regional service is moving many more passengers that our high speed. The long distance, it's long distance high speed, and regional is the other one. So this has been more or less constant. Look, this is the high speed is the one that is growing faster. So this is more or less steady. But take also a look in something that is happening here. This is the EBIT, meaning the kind of the profit, right? Earnings before interest and tax. So take a look in the regional. You see, sorry that all of them are green, but this regional is this one on the top. Look all the level of revenue that we generate in regional. Look the level of revenue that we generate in high speed. And remember that I was telling you that the infrastructure business unit was the only one who was not having the drop, but look the big drop during the pandemic. But look what happened with the profitability, with the EBIT. Even though that we are moving way less passengers in high speed than in regional, look the profitability of high speed. So high speed is not only, the market share is not only growing in the number of passengers, but it's also growing, and it's growing faster in the profit. And then if we go line by line, for example, when we finalize the VDE 8, which was the last project finalizing the connection of high speed between Berlin and Munich, just in less than 3 months, the market share of rail in this corridor was jumping from 23% to 46%. And remember that I was showing at the very end that in general, of course, the one that I was showing with 6% was the overall. And I think the overall has grown a couple of points. But if you take a look what happened with high speed, so we have, as I said, in less than 3 months, the market share of this corridor jumped from 23 to 46.
And then there was one. And then Richard Martin is saying, are competing operators privately owned? And you did have a pie chart on that. And then I feel like I'm missing something. Yeah,
unfortunately, I cannot see the question. So
yeah. And then there's a question here. So to what degree, so how fast has Germany been adding new high-speed lines?
We remember that we always are working in improving the corridors. So and this is, as I said, this is not only about high speed. Of course, the main driver of this is to try to improve the travel times and the speeds, because this is how we increase the ridership. But we are improving also many of the other lines. So, and I mentioned before that we have something that was called the VDE. This was call it the first infrastructure bill in Germany, or the first big one. And it was, as I explained before, it was having 9 projects for rail. 1 was canceled, 8 were completed. The last one was the one that I was mentioning before, between Berlin and Munich, which is VDE 8. And right now, I think it was in 2019, a second call it infrastructure bill was released, and now is it called Strong Rail. If you can Google Strong Rail in Germany, even though that they all, again, billions are going to be invested in the railway in Germany, and when you look at the goals, one of the key goals is to double the number of passengers in high speed. I think I have it in another slide, but let me try to find it while we look for more. But I mean, this is this strong rail. It's a cool one, and let me see. I don't want to start flipping all the screens.
Well, while you're doing that, I just want to point out an interesting thing. Here in the States, long distance is the 15 or 16 night trains that go from Chicago to the coasts and along the coasts. But in Europe, long distance is anything outside of the city. So Chicago to Indianapolis would be a long distance train. I prefer that definition, and I think we should call what we call in the States long distance trains, we should call them interregional as opposed to a long distance, but oh well.
Didn't I show these a little bit of this? Hold on, I'm trying to open another presentation.
Well, the interesting thing is that the high-speed trains in Germany cover the whole country, but high-speed lines are adding piece by piece. And so, you know, you can take an ICE train from the bottom to the top, and maybe on half of it, you're going on a 200 mile an hour high-speed line. Maybe you're going on a 150 mile an hour speed line, etc. But
hold on, I apologize, but I'm bad in multitasking. So while I was looking for the slides, I may miss exactly what you said. But take a look here. So this is the first one was called VDE, and in 2019, then Strong Rail. I think I showed this slide in the previous seminar. And then now we have these goals for the climate. Remember that the main goal of this one was for the unity and for increasing the traffic of the rail. Now this one is for the climate, for the people, for the economy, and for Europe, because now we are not only talking about connecting Germany. Now it's talking about connecting Europe. And take a look in this one for the people. This is the target.
okay.
To double the number of passengers in high speed. This is one of the key reasons why this Strong Rail, as I said, I want to compare this to the infrastructure bill of the United States.
Excellent. I think so. That's the top of the hour. Yes. Thank you very much. Once again, this was very helpful, very informative. Really appreciate you taking your time to do these things. I do look forward to having another one in the fall. I'm sorry, I'm distracted by, do we have one scheduled? I don't think you and I have one scheduled, but we'd look forward to doing another one. Folks who have joined us, if you really appreciated this, please go to our website, highspeedrail.us, and go up in the upper right-hand corner and click either join or donate. And you can be a part of making sure that these continue to go, and also the people, local leaders across the country understand what they need to do to get better trains for their cities. So thanks again for joining. And thank you, Jorge, for joining us.